So what if I told you that one of the most effective ways to permanently alter a nation's wealth distribution or even rewire its urban transit systems isn't some sweeping change in tax policy?
I mean, I'd probably assume you were talking about a massive federal infrastructure bill or something.
Right, but what if I told you it's actually a month-long soccer tournament?
Yeah, it sounds completely absurd on its face. We're so conditioned to view sports as, a cultural luxury, like a distraction.
Exactly, just entertainment.
Right. We definitely don't view them as these primary engines of macroeconomic restructuring.
But that is exactly the paradigm we really need to shatter today. So welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today we are going to look under the hood of the FIFA World Cup.
Specifically, we're focusing on the upcoming 2026 tournament, which is spanning the United States, Canada, and Mexico.
Yeah, and to really make sense of the financial projections for 2026, we are going to trace the blueprint left behind by the 2022 tournament in Qatar. And we have a pretty formidable stack of research on the table today for you.
We really do. We're pulling from institutional financial forecasts, from Goldman Sachs, Bolfa Securities, and the investment bank William Blair.
We're also examining some really granular real estate and urban development assessments from Partners Real Estate and Cityscape Intelligence. Plus, we've got European football finance data from Deloitte.
And grounding all of this, we're looking at academic studies too. There's one from Denison University on geopolitical diplomacy and a really sobering historical data analysis from the ECPR.
Right, the European Consortium for Political Research, which focuses heavily on wealth inequality.
It is a dense stack, but, it's completely necessary. If you try to analyze an event of this magnitude merely by looking at the number of tickets sold, you're missing everything.
Or like the volume of merchandise moved at the stadium kiosks.
Exactly. You are entirely missing the underlying financial architecture if you only look at that stuff.
I want to start by framing the sheer physical scale of what North America is actually preparing for. Because 2026 is fundamentally rewriting the rule book.
Oh, absolutely. The tournament is expanding from 32 to 48 teams.
Which is a huge jump. That means 104 matches distributed across 16 host cities in 3 different countries.
And Bova Securities is projecting a total physical attendance of roughly 6.5 million people.
Just as a point of reference for you listening, the previous attendance record was set the last time the U.S. hosted back in 1994, and that was 3.5 million.
So we are practically doubling the human footprint.
We really are. And with that doubling of the human footprint comes a corresponding explosion in the economic forecasts, right?
Right. There's a joint report commissioned by FIFA and the World Trade Organization utilizing data from Open Economics that put forward a very specific projection.
What was the number they hit on?
They estimate a combined gross domestic product boost of $40.9 billion for the 3 host nations, alongside the creation of roughly 185,000 full-time equivalent jobs.
Wow.
Yeah, and for the United States alone, the projection is a $17.2 billion direct contribution to the GDP.
Wait, let me stop you right there. Because when politicians or, bidding committees throw around a number like a $40 billion GDP boost, it's treated as this unquestionable economic miracle.
It's taken as gospel, yeah.
But I know for a fact that the academic community and independent economists, they tear those numbers to pieces.
Oh, they rip them apart. The Goldman Sachs research note in our stack, which was authored by international economists Kevin Daly and Mambuna Ng, essentially calls those projections a mirage.
A mirage. That's strong wording.
It is, but they argue that the long-term macroeconomic lift of hosting a World Cup is statistically negligible.
Okay, we need to dig into that. Because their skepticism is rooted in 2 foundational economic principles that these promotional forecasts almost always seem to ignore, right?
Exactly. They ignore the substitution effect and the dilution effect.
Okay, break those down for us. Because if 3 million international tourists fly into North America, book hotel rooms for a week, and eat at local restaurants, you cannot tell me that money was already in the local economy.
It seems like a net injection of foreign capital.
Exactly. How is that negligible?
That is a very common counterargument, but it only looks at one side of the ledger. Let's tackle the substitution effect first.
Okay, substitution effect.
The models that predict a $40 billion boost use what is called a forward-looking economic impact model.
Which means what exactly?
Essentially, they draw a giant circle around a host city, look at every single dollar spent inside that circle during the tournament, and log it as new economic growth.
Which is deeply flawed.
It's incredibly flawed because human behavior just doesn't work like that. Think about your own monthly budget, right?
Right.
If you live in Dallas and you decide to spend $600 on World Cup tickets, another $200 on official merchandise, and say $300 drinking at the fan zone.
You didn't just magically summon an extra $1,100 of income out of thin air.
Exactly. You substituted your spending, you canceled the weekend trip to Austin, you skipped going to the movies, you held off on buying a new television.
You just took a slice of your existing local consumption pie and handed it to FIFA and the stadium vendors instead.
Precisely. So the total amount of money circulating in the local economy didn't actually grow, it just changed hands.
So the local movie theater owner and the local appliance store actually lose revenue during the tournament.
They absolutely do. Now, to address your point about the international tourists bringing in foreign capital.
Right, because a tourist from London flying to Dallas definitely brings new money.
Yes, but the substitution effect applies to geography as well. Economists like Victor Matheson point out that regular tourists, the people who are planning to visit Dallas for a convention or take a family vacation to Miami,
They see the inflated hotel prices, the nightmare traffic, the massive crowds.
and they actively avoid the host cities. They go somewhere else. Furthermore, local residents often leave town to escape the chaos, taking their spending power with them.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So the new tourist dollars often just barely replace the fleeing local and regular tourist dollars.
Exactly. The net gain is a fraction of the gross revenue.
Okay, so that's substitution. What is the dilution effect then?
The dilution effect is particularly devastating to the economic argument for 2026 because the
Right.
combined economies of the United States, Canada, and Mexico represent roughly 30% of the entire global GDP.
Right, we are talking about an unfathomably large economic base. The U.S. economy is not some small emerging market.
So let's take that $17.2 billion output projected for the U.S. On a human scale, $17 billion is an astronomical fortune.
Obviously.
But according to Newsweek and Statista data, the U.S. GDP for just the first quarter of 2026 is projected to be nearly $31.86 trillion.
Trillion with a T.
Yes. So when you actually do the math, that $17.2 billion equates to roughly 0.05% of the U.S. GDP.
Wait, 0.05%?
It is quite literally a rounding error. When an economy is that vast, even unprecedented commercial activity gets diluted to the point of being statistically invisible.
So if you look at national economic growth charts following a mega event, you cannot even find the bump.
You really can't. It gets completely swallowed by the baseline economic activity of the nation.
Okay, let me challenge this entire framework then. Because if the immediate macroeconomic boost is an illusion, and the substitution effect cannibalizes local business, and the net revenue is diluted into nothingness.
Why do they do it?
Yeah. Why on earth do countries fight so viciously to host this thing? I mean, they spend millions of dollars just on the bidding process alone.
Are the leaders of these nations just economically illiterate?
Not at all. It just means we're looking at the wrong ledger entirely.
Okay, explain that.
This brings us to a fundamental realization. Hosting the World Cup is not a cost. It is a strategic investment.
Let me try a metaphor here to, ground this a bit.
Go for it.
If you undertake a massive home renovation like you tear out the kitchen, add a master suite, landscape the backyard, you do not measure the return on that investment by how much alcohol your friends consume at the housewarming party.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. The party is just the celebration. You measure the return on investment by the permanent, long-term increase in your property value.
Exactly. The tournament itself is just the housewarming party. The actual return on investment is the permanent infrastructure, the accelerated urban development, and the repositioning of the city on the global stage.
So if it is a strategic investment, we really need to look at the physical assets. We need to look at the real estate, because this is where the theory becomes concrete.
And to understand the strategy for 2026, we have to examine the ultimate precedent, which is Qatar 2022.
The scale of the Qatar precedent is honestly difficult to overstate. Since winning the bid in 2010, the Qatari government spent an estimated $220 billion.
It is the most expensive tournament in human history by an absurd margin. Just for context, the previous record was roughly $15 billion by Brazil back in 2014.
Wait, hold on. $220 billion for a 28-day sporting event. That breaks the bounds of logic. How do you even physically spend that much money on stadiums?
Well, you don't. And that is the crucial distinction the Cityscape Intelligence report highlights.
So where did the money go?
The vast majority of that $220 billion was not spent on soccer pitches. It was spent building an entire national ecosystem. Qatar used the immovable deadline of the World Cup to force the modernization of their entire country.
Oh, I see. So they built entire metropolitan areas from scratch.
Completely from scratch.
The report details this incredibly well. They built the city of Lusail, which now houses over 200,000 people.
Yes, and they developed the Pearl, which is this massive artificial island with luxury residential and commercial zones.
They redeveloped the West Bay Financial District, too. The World Cup was simply the catalyst to justify the massive capital expenditure.
Exactly. Furthermore, they were hyper-aware of the white elephant trap.
A white elephant being a massive, expensive infrastructure project, usually a stadium that basically serves no purpose after the event.
Right, it just costs a fortune in maintenance,
Well,
eventually sitting rotting and unused. Qatar specifically designed their infrastructure to avoid this.
How so?
Well, Cityscape notes they built an 800-megawatt solar power plant. During the tournament, it helped power the venues, but after the tournament, it permanently fed clean energy into the national grid.
I was actually struck by the stadium designs themselves. They built Stadium 974, which was the first fully dismountable stadium in World Cup history.
Oh, that was fascinating. It was constructed entirely out of shipping containers and modular steel.
Yeah, and the moment the tournament ended, the plan was to literally unbolt it, take it apart, and either repurpose the materials for local construction or ship it to developing nations.
And as for the permanent structures, they immediately rolled those into a broader sports hosting strategy.
Which the Denison University study points out.
Right. Because Qatar now possesses this state-of-the-art infrastructure, they seamlessly transitioned into hosting the 2023 AFC Asian Cup. They secured the 2030 Asian Games.
And they are leveraging the fact that 95% of the necessary facilities are already built to launch a highly competitive bid for the 2036 Olympic Games.
They essentially built a permanent engine for sports tourism.
Okay, I understand the Qatar model. They had immense sovereign wealth and they needed to build a modern nation from the sand up. But the 2026 strategy in North America has to be fundamentally different, right?
It is entirely different.
Because Los Angeles, Dallas, Miami, these cities already exist, the stadiums already exist. So what is the real estate play here?
The Partners Real Estate Report outlines this beautifully. In the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, the strategy is not about building from scratch. It is about leveraging the global spotlight to unlock capital for long-deferred urban transit and community upgrades.
So using the tournament as leverage.
Yes.
Huh?
It is about taking civic improvements that might have been stuck in municipal red tape for 2 decades and forcing them through because there is a hard, unmoving deadline.
Give me a concrete example of how that works.
Let's look at Dallas. They are hosting 9 matches, including a highly coveted semifinal at AT&T Stadium.
Right.
Now, the stadium itself is getting a $295 million renovation. They have to widen the field to meet FIFA regulations, and they are installing temporary natural grass over the turf.
But that is just venue maintenance, really.
Exactly. The true civic legacy is happening outside the stadium.
The report mentions the Cotton Belt multi-use trail, right?
Yes. The region is accelerating a $150 million investment into the Cotton Belt Trail and making massive expansions to the DART, the Dallas Area Rapid Transit System.
Wow. And this isn't just about moving fans from a hotel to a soccer game.
Not at all. It is about permanently connecting disparate neighborhoods, reducing long-term traffic congestion, and significantly increasing the land value along those new transit corridors.
Right, because when you lay down permanent public transit, you fundamentally alter the economic mobility of the residents who live there?
You change the entire fabric of the city.
I see. And what about a city like Houston? They are expected to see a $1.5 billion economic footprint from their matches.
Houston provides a really fascinating look at commercial district revitalization. They are focusing heavily on an area called East Downtown, or EDO.
Oh, I've heard of that area.
Yeah, the plan is to build a $50 million fan festival district there. But again, we aren't talking about temporary pop-up tents that just vanish in July.
They're building real infrastructure.
Exactly. The city is using the World Cup funding to upgrade the permanent infrastructure, the plumbing, the electrical grids, the pedestrian walkways, to transform EDO into a permanent, year-round entertainment and commercial hub.
So the World Cup provides the initial capital injection, but the city reaps the property tax revenue for decades.
Precisely.
Now, Atlanta seems to be taking a bit of a different approach, focusing heavily on the sport itself as a permanent industry.
They are. Atlanta is projecting a $1 billion impact, but their crown jewel legacy project is the construction of the Arthur M. Blank U.S. Soccer National Training Center.
That's a huge facility.
Massive. They are utilizing the momentum of the World Cup to build the physical infrastructure required to make Atlanta the permanent epicenter of American soccer development.
They are literally anchoring an entire sports industry in their city.
They really are.
Now, what about the traditional powerhouses? When I think of international tourism in the U.S., I immediately think of Miami, New York, and Los Angeles. Surely they are the biggest winners in this real estate and tourism boom.
You would think so, but this is where the William Blair report offers a really counterintuitive insight.
Really? Why is that?
Because in those massive, already established tourist hubs, the World Cup might actually trigger a crowding out effect that diminishes their proportional gains.
Wait, how does a global event diminish gains in a major tourist hub?
It comes down to hotel pricing mechanics and venue capacity. Let's say a family from Europe wants to visit Miami in the summer of 2026.
Okay.
They look at the hotel rates, which have been temporarily jacked up by 400% because of the World Cup. They see the reports of gridlock traffic.
They just say, forget it.
Exactly. They decide to either delay their trip or go to the Caribbean instead. So the World Cup fans fill the hotel rooms, sure, but they are just replacing the regular tourists who are priced out.
Oh, wow. So Miami's hotel occupancy might sit at 95%, but it usually sits at 85% in the summer anyway.
Right. The margin of growth is actually quite small.
I understand now.
Therefore, the William Blair report suggests that the real proportional winners, the cities that experience a genuine transformative surge in their international profile, are the non-traditional tourist destinations.
Like Kansas City or Atlanta.
Exactly. Cities which don't typically see a massive influx of international leisure travelers in June. They will experience a true net positive surge in hospitality revenue and global visibility.
Which transitions perfectly into the next layer of this analysis because, building a transit line or new commercial district is very tangible.
Yes, very physical.
But these nations and cities are also chasing something much more abstract, but arguably much more powerful.
Nation branding and geopolitical soft power.
Exactly. It is the ultimate intangible asset. And again, to understand the mechanics of this, we really have to look at the Middle East because they have practically written the modern textbook on using sports to reshape global perception.
They absolutely have.
I was reading the Denison University study, and it frames this in the context of the Qatar National Vision 2030. We touched on this briefly, but the core objective for Qatar is existential.
It's entirely about survival, yeah.
Because they know their immense wealth is currently tied to a finite resource, hydrocarbons, oil and natural gas. Their 2030 vision is a strict mandate to transition into a diversified, knowledge and service-based economy.
And to do that, you cannot just be seen as a wealthy gas station in the desert.
Yeah.
You must be perceived as a modern, safe, cosmopolitan destination for global capital and international talent.
Right, and the Denison study analyzes exactly how Qatar utilized soft power to achieve this. Just for our listeners who might not be familiar with the terminology, how do political scientists define soft power?
It's a great question. Hard power is coercion. It is military force or crushing economic sanctions. Soft power, on the other hand, is the ability to influence other nations and international actors through attraction, cultural appeal, and diplomacy.
So it's getting what you want because other people naturally want to align with your brand.
Perfectly said. The World Cup offered Qatar an unparalleled platform to project an image of cultural openness and international engagement.
And what really struck me in the Denison study is that this isn't just theoretical public relations, right? It resulted in tangible, high-stakes diplomacy.
Absolutely.
The study details this incredible moment because for years leading up to the tournament, Qatar had been subjected to a severe economic and diplomatic blockade by a coalition of neighboring Gulf states.
Led by Saudi Arabia, yes.
Yeah.
There was real, deep-seated regional hostility. The diplomatic freeze was profound.
But then at the opening ceremony of the 2022 World Cup, with the eyes of the entire globe watching, Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman was seated prominently, and he was photographed wearing a Qatari scarf.
It was a massive statement. The unifying spectacle of the mega event basically provided a face-saving, highly public arena to visually mend those blockades.
It really is a masterclass in utilizing a cultural event for geopolitical leverage.
And furthermore, the global spotlight provided a shield for executing complex economic agreements. While the world's media was entirely focused on the matches in Doha, Qatari officials were quietly and effectively executing major liquefied natural gas deals with Western European powers.
Who were at the time desperately seeking alternatives to Russian energy.
Exactly. They were also secure on long-term contracts with China. The tournament allowed Qatar to position itself as a trusted, neutral mediator on the global stage.
And we are seeing this strategy bleed into the broader regional economy as well, aren't we?
Definitely.
Because the Deloitte UK Annual Review of Football Finance is this massive document that tracks the flow of capital through the European football market. But a really fascinating anomaly they highlight is the sudden, overwhelming influx of transfer monies originating from the Saudi Pro League.
It is a deliberate, aggressive market disruption. Saudi Arabia, much like Qatar and Dubai, is recognizing that owning sports assets is a direct mechanism for capital attraction.
Whether that means hosting a World Cup, launching a global golf tour, or just buying up top-tier European soccer talent.
Right. They are essentially using sovereign wealth to buy a permanent seat at the geopolitical head table.
The Denison study didn't just rely on anecdotes about scarbs and energy deals, though. They actually attempted to mathematically prove the effectiveness of this soft power campaign.
They did, and the math is fascinating.
I have to admit, as a layperson reading an academic paper, their methodology was a bit intimidating. They used something called a causal impact model and time series forecasting. I really need you to translate this into plain English.
I can certainly try.
How do you mathematically prove that a country's brand actually improved?
It is actually a brilliant methodology once you strip away all the academic jargon. The researchers faced a specific problem. How do we know if the surge in tourism to Qatar was because of the World Cup, or if it was just the natural recovery of global travel after the COVID-19 pandemic?
Right, because basically every country saw a bump in tourism post-2020. People wanted to travel again.
Exactly. So they used time series forecasting to build a counterfactual scenario.
Counterfactual meaning like a parallel universe.
That's a great way to put it. Think of it like a GPS recalculating a route you didn't actually take. The algorithm looks at years of historical data, factors in the regional post-COVID recovery rates of neighboring countries, and mathematically simulates a parallel universe.
Okay, I follow you.
It essentially asks, what would Qatar's tourism numbers have looked like from 2022 to 2024 if the World Cup had never existed?
Okay, so they establish a baseline of normal expected growth.
Yes. And then they compare that mathematical baseline to the actual reality, and the results were just staggering. Compared to the counterfactual baseline, Qatar experienced a 307% average monthly increase in tourist arrivals.
307%. That is not a marginal bump.
It is a structural transformation of their tourism sector. The model attributes an estimated cumulative gain of 9 million additional visitors directly to the event's halo effect.
Wow, 9 million extra people just because of the tournament's branding effect.
And crucially, the data revealed that not only were more people arriving, but the average length of stay was actively increasing.
Meaning what exactly?
It proved that Qatar had successfully redefined its global image. It went from being seen as a brief layover airport into a premier, comfortable, safe leisure destination.
Now, obviously, the United States, Canada, and Mexico do not need to introduce themselves to the global community in that way. The U.S. doesn't need to prove it is a safe destination for capital.
Right, their branding needs are different.
But this soft power mechanism still functions on a municipal level, doesn't it? It is about cities using the global broadcast to secure foreign direct investment.
Yes, and I'm really glad you brought up foreign direct investment, or FDI. At its core, FDI is when a company from one country builds a factory, opens an office, or acquires a business in another country.
Or even domestically, when a massive corporation relocates its headquarters from one state to another.
Exactly. The Partners Real Estate Report draws a direct correlation between the infrastructure upgrades driven by the World Cup and the acceleration of corporate attraction.
Let's look at the data on that.
Take Dallas again. We talked about how they are investing heavily in transit and modernizing their urban core. Well, in recent years, aligning perfectly with this massive civic push, the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex has successfully attracted massive corporate relocations.
Right, Goldman Sachs is building a massive new campus there.
And Caterpillar moved its global headquarters to the area. We are talking about the injection of over 5,000 high-paying, permanent corporate jobs.
That's huge for a local economy.
And Atlanta is experiencing a very similar phenomenon. They are leveraging their modernized infrastructure to attract massive expansions from tech giants like Microsoft and Google.
So the logic is basically, if a city can smoothly manage the logistical nightmare of hosting 1 million international soccer fans, providing secure transit, elite hospitality, and seamless telecommunications.
A corporation looks at that and says, that city is a safe, stable environment for our billion-dollar headquarters.
Precisely. The World Cup is a month-long, globally televised advertisement for a city's logistical competence.
It really is the ultimate pitch.
Which brings us to a really fascinating pivot in our deep dive today. Because all of this global visibility, this corporate networking, and this modernization directly feeds a highly lucrative, specialized sector of the economy.
Oh, absolutely.
I want to talk about luxury travel and specifically how these capital market winners benefit, because as we sift through this data, it becomes glaringly obvious that the average fan buying a hot dog in the upper deck is, well, entirely irrelevant to the real financial machinations of this event.
The average fan is just the backdrop. The real economic engine here is elite consumption.
Break that down for us.
To understand the scale of this, we have to look at the projected broadcast numbers. The 2026 World Cup is anticipating a global audience of roughly 6 billion viewers throughout the tournament.
Wait, 6 billion? That is approximately 3/4 of the human population.
Yes, it completely eclipses the viewership of the Paris Olympics. And when you aggregate that much human attention, you create an unprecedented gravity for corporate wealth.
I was actually looking at a financial dispatch regarding a company called TKO Group Holdings. For those who follow sports business, TKO is the conglomerate that owns the UFC and the WWE, so combat sports.
Right.
But they have a subsidiary called On Location, which operates in the premium hospitality space. And On Location managed to secure the official hospitality partnership for the 2026 World Cup.
And their mandate is exclusively high-end.
Exactly. They aren't selling standard tickets. They are selling the luxury suites, the VIP access, the exclusive catered events, the private networking lounges.
The high-margin stuff.
Right. And the demand from corporate entities and high-net-worth individuals is so aggressive that TKO is already projecting an additional $75 million in pure profit just from their operations surrounding this one event.
That data point aligns flawlessly with the analysis in the William Blair report, which tracks consumer trends globally.
What did they find?
They highlight an incredibly robust, seemingly price-insensitive demand for premium travel post-pandemic. The wealthiest demographic of consumers is willing to spend exponentially more for exclusivity, privacy, and highly curated experiences.
So things like private aviation, five-star hotel buyouts, bespoke culinary experiences.
Yes, and returning to our baseline, Qatar foresaw this exact pivot toward luxury and aggressively capitalized on it.
The Cityscape report details this, doesn't it?
It does. It outlines the infrastructure they built specifically to capture the post-World Cup wealthy traveler. They definitely weren't building budget hostels for backpackers.
No, they built Aquatar on Katapan Island, which is this ultra-luxury water theme park with an oil rig motif featuring an 85-meter-high water slide.
It's wild. They also built a massive winter wonderland in Lusail. They're explicitly targeting the global elite to hit their Vision 2030 goal,
which aims to make tourism account for 12% of their total GDP, valuing the sector at roughly $55 billion annually.
So the host cities build the playground, and the corporations capture the revenue.
And this extends directly into the stock market, right?
Yeah.
The financial markets are tracking this event as a massive catalyst for specific equities.
Oh, investors are watching very closely.
The financial publication Barron's recently published a list of 5 stocks to watch specifically for the 2026 World Cup. And it perfectly illustrates how a sports event functions as a diversified consumption engine.
Let's analyze those equities, because they represent entirely different sectors of the economy. The first one is broadcasting, Comcast.
Right. Comcast owns NBC Universal, and through that, they own Telemundo and the streaming platform Peacock. They hold the exclusive Spanish-language broadcasting rights in the United States,
Which is incredibly lucrative.
given the massive, deeply passionate Hispanic population in the U.S., combined with the fact that Mexico is a co-host, the viewership numbers on Telemundo are going to be astronomical. The advertising revenue potential during those broadcasts is almost incalculable.
The second stock represents global consumer goods. Anheuser-Busch InBev, the massive conglomerate behind Budweiser.
They are a legacy partner of FIFA, right?
They are. The analysts at JP Morgan estimate that the global consumption of beer surrounding the World Cup could actually add another quarter of a percentage point to AB InBev's overall global sales volume.
Yeah, I mean, a quarter of a percent doesn't sound like much until you realize AB InBev sells roughly $60 billion worth of beer a year.
And there is a fascinating geographical multiplier here, too.
Oh, how so?
If the Brazilian national team makes a deep run in the tournament, AB InBev's controlling stake in Ambev, which is the dominant Brazilian brewer, means the profit margins expand even further based on sheer national euphoria.
Wow, so the on-field results actually moved the stock. The third stock on the list ties directly back to that massive Deloitte report on European football finance we discussed earlier. Manchester United.
This is a fascinating play on asset valuation. Manchester United is one of the few top-tier football clubs that is publicly traded on the stock exchange.
And a football club's primary capital assets are its players.
Exactly. If Manchester United players represent their national teams in 2026 and they perform brilliantly on the largest stage in the world, the underlying market value of those human assets increases dramatically.
Which boosts the balance sheet of the club.
Right, which can drive up the stock price, particularly in an environment rife with rumors of private equity buyouts or ownership changes.
The final stock on the Barron's list is the one that truly highlights the intersection of mega events and municipal politics, which is Airbnb.
Yes, the Airbnb angle is wild.
They are officially projecting around 380,000 fan bookings during the tournament. But the strategic angle here is much deeper than just renting out spare bedrooms.
It is entirely about regulatory leverage.
Let me set the stage for this because it's so interesting. Recently, New York City implemented incredibly strict short-term rental laws, known as Local Law 18. They essentially regulated Airbnb out of existence for tens of thousands of hosts in the city.
Right.
The regulations require hosts to be present during the stay, among other really strict rules, which absolutely crush the supply of short-term rentals.
So what happens when New York, as a host city, experiences a massive influx of international fans who simply cannot find or afford traditional hotel rooms?
The demand spills over the border. The fan bookings and the associated millions of dollars in economic activity are going to flood right into New Jersey, where the regulations are completely different.
And Airbnb isn't just passively accepting this. According to the analysis, Airbnb intends to use this massive, highly visible shift in capital as a political weapon.
Oh, wow. So they use the data as a weapon.
Exactly. They plan to take the data showing the massive surge of tax revenue and tourism dollars hitting New Jersey, walk into the offices of New York City officials, and basically say, look at the fortune you are actively turning away. Ease your regulations.
Hold on, let me push back on that slightly. Are we really suggesting that a massive tech platform is relying on a one-month soccer tournament to overturn municipal housing legislation in one of the most complex real estate markets in the world?
Overturn entirely? Perhaps not. But as a powerful lobbying tool, absolutely. It provides empirical real-time data of lost revenue. It perfectly encapsulates our thesis the event is a catalyst.
Right. It accelerates elite networking, it drives luxury consumption, and it provides real leverage for regulatory lobbying.
Yes.
But as we marvel at the billions of dollars flowing through these capital markets, it is our responsibility to look at the entire macroeconomic picture here. Because a rapid injection of capital on this scale does not fall evenly across a society.
No, it absolutely does not. And this brings us to a critical empirical analysis of who actually benefits from these mega events.
We have a deeply important study from The Loop, which is the official political science blog of the ECPR, the European Consortium for Political Research.
And we should note, we're just looking at their data here impartially.
Right, strictly based on the macroeconomic reality. The researchers conducted a sweeping panel data analysis using the World Inequality Database. And they didn't just look at one or two recent tournaments.
They looked at a massive data set.
Yeah, they analyzed macroeconomic data across more than 120 countries, stretching all the way back to the year 1900. Their objective was to isolate and test the specific long-term impact of hosting sports mega events on wealth distribution.
And the data they uncovered reveals a stark historical reality. Hosting mega events is statistically correlated with a significant widening of the wealth gap within the host country.
The study makes a very specific and crucial distinction here between the income gap and the wealth gap, doesn't it?
Yes, that distinction is vital.
It notes that while hosting a tournament might not drastically alter the day-to-day income disparity, it absolutely explodes the wealth disparity. Walk us through the mechanics of why that happens.
It fundamentally comes down to asset ownership versus wage labor. Let's return to the massive infrastructure projects we discussed earlier.
Like the $295 million stadium renovation in
Or
Dallas.
the billions spent building the city of Lusail in Qatar. When a government authorizes a massive, rapid injection of capital to build infrastructure, that money has to be captured by entities capable of executing the work.
Right, you have to hire massive construction conglomerates, engineering firms, logistics providers.
Exactly. The entities that capture those massive government contracts are already positioned at the absolute top of the economic pyramid. They are the ultra-rich capital owners, the major corporate shareholders, and the executives of multinational construction firms.
Makes sense.
When they secure a $500 million contract, the value of their capital assets, their companies, their stock portfolios, their real estate holdings, accelerates dramatically and permanently.
But wait, doesn't that money trickle down? I mean, the FIFA projection promised 185,000 new jobs for the 2026 World Cup. You have to hire local laborers to pour the concrete, run the security details, clean the hotel rooms, serve the food.
Sure.
Doesn't that lift the working class?
It provides wages, yes. But here is where the distinction between income and wealth becomes vital. The jobs created by mega events are overwhelmingly short-term temporary contracts.
Right. They end when the tournament ends.
Exactly. A local laborer might secure a well-paying job for 8 months to help construct a fan festival or drive a shuttle bus. Earning a wage for 8 months provides a temporary boost in income, which helps them pay their immediate bills.
But an 8-month contract does not provide the financial leverage required to buy a house or invest in the stock market or start a business.
No, it does not allow a worker to build long-term generational wealth.
So when the tournament ends and the dust settles, the billionaire owner of the construction firm retains the permanent increase in their corporate valuation and asset portfolio.
While the laborer's temporary paycheck stops entirely, leaving them essentially back where they started.
That is the precise mechanism of the widening wealth gap. The asset owner accumulates permanent infrastructure and capital, and the laborer receives a fleeting wage.
Furthermore, the ECPR researchers noted a deeply concerning geographical disparity in their data. They found that this widening of the wealth gap is doubled in magnitude when the mega event is hosted in non-democracies or non-OECD countries.
For clarity, just for our listeners, what is the OECD and why does membership matter in this context?
The OECD is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It is an intergovernmental organization mostly comprising highly developed democratic nations with high-income economies.
So think of Western Europe, the US, Canada, Japan, Australia.
Right, so countries with established regulatory frameworks. OECD countries generally have stronger institutional quality. They have independent labor unions, stricter minimum wage laws, transparent public procurement processes, and progressive taxation.
And in non-OECD countries or non-democracies, these institutional safeguards are often weaker or sometimes non-existent.
Exactly. Without strong labor protections or transparent bidding processes, the rapid influx of capital is captured even more aggressively by a much smaller circle of elites.
While the laborers receive even less protection or compensation.
Yes, and the ECPR data showed that this isn't just a brief statistical anomaly during the month of the tournament. The widening of the wealth gap exhibits a spillover effect that persists and compounds for 2 to 3 years after the host nation hands out the trophy.
It forces a deeply uncomfortable calculation for host cities, doesn't it? Municipal leaders really have to grapple with a dual reality.
They do.
On one hand, the long-term civic benefits of a new transit line or a modernized electrical grid are undeniable. They genuinely improve the city. But on the other hand, the macroeconomic data is perfectly clear. The wealth generated by executing those projects is intensely concentrated at the very top.
It raises an important question. When the public underwrites the cost of modernization, who ultimately owns the legacy of the World Cup?
That is a very sobering reality to process. We have covered an immense amount of ground in this deep dive, pulling apart the ledger of the largest sporting event on Earth. We started by looking at ticket sales and the promise of a localized GDP bump.
Only to realize that the traditional metrics of economic impact are largely a mirage, completely swallowed by substitution and dilution.
We moved past the mirage to find the actual strategy, leveraging a hard deadline to force urban modernization and permanently alter a city's real estate trajectory.
We saw how nations deploy the tournament as a geopolitical tool, utilizing the global broadcast to project soft power, mend diplomatic fractures, and attract multi-billion-dollar corporate investments.
We analyzed how the massive influx of human attention fuels a luxury hospitality boom and literally moves the needle on the global stock market. And finally, we confronted the historical data proving that this massive capital velocity inevitably widens the wealth gap within the host nation.
It's a phenomenal, multi-layered case study in how global attention drives tangible, permanent macroeconomic shifts.
Bringing all these threads together, from the Goldman Sachs skepticism to Qatar's Vision 2030, from the VIP luxury suites to the historical data on inequality, there is one inescapable ultimate conclusion we have to draw from this analysis. The World Cup is one of the world's most powerful capital allocation events.
It truly is. The billions of dollars don't just magically appear and disappear. They're strategically directed, aggressively leveraged, and ultimately captured by those positioned to receive them.
Absolutely.
Which brings to mind one final incredible statistic from the William Blair report that I think perfectly encapsulates our deep dive.
Oh, let's hear it.
Historically, the stock market of the World Cup winning nation actually outperforms the global equity market, averaged by 5.5% in the single month following the final match.
Wow. The ultimate financial victory lap driven by sheer national euphoria.
It really makes you wonder. When the final whistle blows in July of 2026 and the confetti rains down across North America, will the ultimate winners be the athletes celebrating on the pitch or the institutional investors quietly holding their index funds?
That is a brilliant and challenging question to leave you with. Thank you so much for joining us, for wrestling with the data, and for exploring the hidden economics of the beautiful game on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.